What is up guys, it's Arnek and welcome back to this week's Tutorial Tuesday video. Today we're going to talk about my top 5 easy to use expressions inside of Adobe After Effects. So if you're just starting out using expressions, this video is for you. Okay, so before we start our list, let's quickly talk about what expressions are and why you should use them. Expressions are a form of simplified code to automate your animation. They can create complex dependencies which go beyond the capabilities of normal parenting, for example. They can even work across several compositions. And on top of all, they will save you a whole lot of time, which our number 5 actually shows pretty well. It's the LoopOut function. After creating 2 or more keyframes for your object, you want this exact set of keyframes to repeat itself over and over again. Well, of course, there is a way of copying the keyframes and paste them over and over again, but have fun with that if you need to change the timing and values. So instead, simply add the expression LoopOut. To be able to type in any kind of expression, simply Alt-Option click the stopwatch on any of the property you want to address and type the expression. So in this case, type LoopOut with a capital O, and well, guess what? All your keyframes are now looped. Expression tip number 4, the wiggle. Good old classic wiggle. Probably the most known expression of all. Use it to make your object jump around uncontrollably like a squirrel on steroids or make him float really smoothly. It is often used in cases of VFX work to make static footage like this one look more handheld and natural. But it can also be used to make simple randomized animations. Here we go with tip number 3, time. Essential to every collection of expressions to master. In its most basic form, time returns the current time, but you can use these values in a variety of ways. One obvious way, of course, is animating the clock, right? So for the rotation specs, enter time, which will result in 1 degree rotation per second, which in most cases is not really what you need. So multiplying the time values will obviously speed up the animations, while dividing will slow it down. If you, for example, want 1 full rotation in 1 second, you need to multiply time by 360. And from here on it's very easy to pinpoint the exact values for the rotation. 1 rotation in 5 seconds, simply divide the whole thing by 5 and you'll get it. Need it in 8 seconds? No problem, simply divide by 8 instead and you're done. Next on the list is number 2, the Pickwhip. Maybe not really an expression itself, but it is extremely powerful. Open up the expression interface of any property you want and you'll see this Pickwhip icon popping up, which now you can use to Pickwhip to any other property. To better understand what I mean, let's look at this example. We have 2 circles. One is scaling up and down, by the way I used the LoopOut ping pong function for that, and the other one is not affected at all. If we now enter an expression for the scale value of the second circle and Pickwhip to the scale of the first circle, you will see that circle 2 will copy all the scale behavior of circle 1. And we can still work with something like the position of circle 1 without affecting circle 2. And you can even work with the numbers that the Pickwhip will deliver, which is very useful if you want your object to behave in a specific way. And finally, my number 1 tip for easy to use expressions is the if-else conditioning. Let's take a look at this example of a beautifully designed and hyper-realistic traffic light. Okay, we want this to behave similarly to a real traffic light. So we open up the opacity property for one of our traffic lights. Alt-Option click the stopwatch to enter an expression. First of all, we need some variables for this to work. Let's call the first one visible equals Pickwhip the slider controller and end with semicolon. Now we need a second variable. Let's call this one this index equals index, which takes the index of the current layer, minus Pickwhip the adjustment layer point index. So basically we subtract the index of the adjustment layer from the index of the layer itself. That way our expression will still work when we add more layers on top. Now with our variable set up, type if, open brackets, visible equals this index, So basically we're asking After Effects if our variable visible, so the value of slider control, is exactly the same as the current layer's index minus the adjustment layer's index. And if that is the case, set opacity to 100. These curly brackets are very important here. And if it is not, else, open brackets, set opacity to 0. And if we adjust the values for the slider controller, we can see that if it's 1, it will show up. Not at 2, not even at 1.5, only at 1. With all that said, copy the whole expression and paste it for the opacity properties of the remaining lights. And it will still work because we're working with relative numbers instead of absolute numbers. Now you simply add keyframes for the slider controller, turn them to toggle keyframes, and you're all set. Please note that we only scratched the surface of expressions in general for sure, but even for the expressions we covered today. You'll make best use of this video if you experiment for yourself with everything you've learned and combine them in different ways to see how they work and how they can work together. Do you guys want to see more expression tutorials in the future? And which tip was most interesting to you? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you guys for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe if you aren't already. I'll see you in the next one. Cheers!